You can probably just turn the waiting room off at this point.
And one moment here. And Mr. Long, you are good to go.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. All right. Good evening, everybody. I'm going to call the September 20th, 2021 Scituate School Committee meeting to order. In response to Governor Baker's declaration of a public health emergency and the related emergency executive order dated March 12, 2020, Town of Scituate public meetings shall meet remotely until further notice. I know other boards are meeting in public, but we're school committee is continuing to meet remotely. This meeting will be recorded and will be posted following the meeting. Public comment will be available through Zoom. Community members can also email me at mlong@cit.org. So I'll do a roll call vote to start this meeting. Long, yes. Gates?
Yes.
Lindblom?
Yes.
Brandolini?
Yes.
And Borkowski?
Yes.
Good evening, everybody. So the first item on our agenda tonight is welcoming a new school committee member. While I do want to thank, as many people know, this was a long 2-month process when Mr. Hayes resigned to ultimately choosing a new school committee member. So I do want to thank the 8 individuals that did apply for the position. I also want to thank Scituate TV for their work in recording and making the sessions available live through Facebook. The Board of Selectmen for their help through the process, and then Lorraine Devon for all the work she did behind the scenes. That being said, I do want to welcome Dr. Carrie Borkowski to the school committee. She was officially signed in with the town clerk last week and is an official member of the school committee. Glad we're finally to a point where we have a full 5-person committee back again. I want to thank you for applying, coming through, and ultimately being appointed to the school committee. Do you have anything you want to say before we move on?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Long. I just want to echo the gratitude that I have for the select board and for the school committee for spending the time. And of course, all the applicants that came out, I'm really looking forward to seeing them, continuing to see them at school committee meetings, and just really grateful for the opportunity. So big thank you.
Thank you. And again, welcome aboard. I don't see our student advisors on, although I made the mistake of telling one of them that I didn't think it was on the agenda. So it's my fault if they don't join tonight. So the first item on the agenda is the superintendent goals with Superintendent Burkett.
Thank you, Chairman Long, and good evening, everyone. I also wanted to share my sense of gratitude towards the combined school committee and the select boards for taking the time to conduct what I felt was an in-depth interview process for the appointment of the vacant school committee seat. I'd also like to commend the 8 candidates that had the courage to apply. I sat through each of the application process, each of the interviews, and they were challenging and they were public. And it just really says a lot about our town that 8 people chose to put in that preparation, and the ideas that they shared were valid and important. So just thank you all, and congratulations to Dr. Bukowski, and welcome aboard. And again, I echo what she had to say, that I love the input and would like to see all those folks continue to be active participants, and appreciate all the time they've spent at these meetings, and their input is greatly appreciated. So thank you all. I'll transition now to trying to share my screen. Okay, so what I'll do this evening is share the goals, and I like to call them our goals, because as I'll show that there's been a lot of input given to these goals, including from the school committee into this year's goals. And I'll go through them, and I'll try to go a page at a time, and then pause for any questions you may have, and certainly at the end, but or stop me, please, if or Chairman Long, if there's questions while I'm going on, I'd be happy to stop at any time and pause and answer your questions. But I will try to build some spots into, because it does get information intensive. And when we get to that point, I'll make sure to pause appropriately to ensure that there's no questions before I continue on. So the first slide talks a little bit about what this whole process is about. And I want to talk about that first, and educate the audience if they're not familiar with it. But obviously the goal here is all in bold, and is student achievement. And so how does this goal setting process tie in to student achievement? And as you look, it starts at the bottom there with superintendent goals, which we'll be sharing tonight. And then once approved, those goals get shared with our administrators. And based on their position, they use those goals as a guide to do their work, depending on their position. And then the same happens with the teacher goals. So the important concept here is that all the oars are in the water, rowing in the same direction, have the same vision, have the same understanding of what the goals are, and that everyone's working towards that, improving those and achieving those goals to increase and improve student achievement and well-being. So that's kind of the concept of goal setting and how we do it in education. And there's a 5-step evaluation cycle that is prescribed and that we all follow as educators. And it starts at the top with the self-assessment and asking educators, and this is something I spent the entire summer on, and we all do as educators pretty regularly. But as the year ends, what are some things that we did very well? What are some things that we need to improve on? What are people offering for feedback? How can I improve based on my evaluation by the school committee as a leader? And how do I personally want to improve and be a model for the school district as an educational leader? So that's the self-assessment, assessing where you're at and how you can improve. The next phase is the phase I'm on right now, is the analysis, goal setting, and plan development. Basically tonight, I share the goals and answer any questions, and certainly any follow-up you may have after tonight and ongoing, and then begin to share those with our community, and so that it allows the administrators, as I showed in the graphic before this, and staff and teachers the ability to set their individual goals that may align with my goals, which become our goals. And then the implementation of the plan is the action steps taken to achieve your goals. So you're working on that right away. And then the formative assessment evaluation part is like a mid-year check-in, right? And for me, this would be a similar presentation like tonight, with some updates on the goals to refresh everybody's memory, and then share some updates on action steps and targets and benchmarks that we've accomplished to make sure that we're on track to achieve our goals. So that's kind of a mid-year report. And then again, all educators do this, have a mid-year check-in, which really is really important. And they offer, and I'll be asking for feedback from the committee at that point. And just as our principals and central office get feedback, the teachers get feedback. So it's a really good process there, checking in, so you don't wait to the end of the year. Just like students, we don't want to wait to the end to do all summative. We want to do formative evaluations as much as possible. And then the summative evaluation is the end of the year evaluation. In this case, on my goals with the school committee, and concluding in a public evaluation. And then the cycle starts all over again. So I'll pause there. Any questions on the assessment cycle? Okay, hearing none, I'll continue on. So
actually, Bill, can I ask one question? I think you said it, but just are you setting your goals first, and then after the presentation, it will go sort of to admin and then teachers following, so that you're all rowing in the same direction? Or are they already starting that process?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it kind of gets into our memorandum of agreement tonight.
Yeah.
We move that a little later because it's a better timeline for educators and administrators to give some time up front to prepare effectively your self-assessment and goals. And so what I thought was important this year is, for a lot of reasons, is to go into each of the schools at their faculty meetings to present this presentation and my personal vision and goals and thoughts, and then do a Q&A with each staff. It's more intimate, smaller group. Each school has its own climate and culture. I thought that was important for a lot of reasons, and that's ongoing, and that'll be, certainly it's based on approval from this committee tonight. They know that, but it's also to allow them, for me to get to know them in person, because we've been remote so long. It also allows them to hear it from the proverbial horse's mouth, like you're hearing tonight, in their comfort of their environment, and to ask many questions that are particular to them. And so it gets our staff to start thinking about, and the principals are there, and the central office gets the same conversation from me. And it's not multiple things going down the chain. It's from me to everybody at individual meetings. So I'll go to six meetings at all the faculty meetings. I'll present to I already presented to our district leadership team. So they all get the message from me. And I think that's something new that I'm trying, and hopefully that's effective. But I think it establishes a lot of things that I just mentioned, that it just personalizes everything. And that's one of our goals this year. And it's not just for the students, I might add, it's for everybody. That it's important for me to make sure that the goals are understood and personalized for our staff as well. So I need to be accessible for them to ask questions and be able to understand them. And then they start, what they're doing now is processing them in their head. And again, it's pending the approval of the school committee, as they know. Once that gets done, it won't be kind of rolled out, tomorrow or the next day. They're already kind of getting an idea of what my thoughts are. And on opening day, when we had all the teachers back, I share the 2 pillars that I'll share to you, which are basically foundations of where this comes from. So on opening day, they kind of had an idea of where I was coming from based on, what I'll share is my resources. And so that was the first dose. Then the next dose, because they got a lot on their mind on opening day, is an individual meeting at each school. And then the final process will be them working with their building level administrators to come up with their own personal goals that are connected to their classroom. And then the administrators will work with our central office team and myself to come up with their goals. So that's kind of how the whole process ties in.
Thanks. Yeah, I feel like there's like kind of a sweet spot that you have to find. And I like that we're shifting a little bit, because it's so hectic at the beginning of the year when they're, you're just getting to know your students and the year's just starting. And then it's just a lot of multitasking, I think. So to get an extra, even just a week or 2 kind of to breathe and think about what you really, really want to see this year within each individual classroom is a nice shift. I'd love to see, get feedback from teachers on how they like the process and your model. So it sounds nice. I'd like to see what they think at the end.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, the beauty of the MOA that I'll share tonight in our evaluation process is I think it's better than what the state, the state guidance gives you generic guidance, and we have it. And it's not the best way to do it. And so I think what I really appreciated about Scituate is that we have an evaluation team that is it's made up of administrators and teachers and department chairs and coordinators. And they collectively looked at what we did last year, and it got overwhelming support, what we did last year. So they kind of just, basically modeled it last year's, what that group came up with. So I think when you work together like that and you kind of validate that these things aren't working, we can all agree these things are working. Let's work together to revise the system. So it's, in one example you just gave for those that are in education, that those dates come up really quick, and sometimes they're rushed because we just got to meet deadlines. And so if you just add a couple of weeks like we did and push everything, you're still not losing anything. It allows you the time to kind of go a little slower over the stuff, get your year kicked off, have more conversations about the goals, give our staff more time to think about how they can personalize their goals to benefit their students and themselves and their professional growth. It just worked really well last year. And that was, that was the common denominator that had us come in and adopt this year's process as well.
Great, thanks.
You're welcome. So state law has us looking at 3 different areas of goals for the superintendent: professional practice. And I'll have, I have 2 goals for that actually this year, one more than last year. And this is professional practice, and all educators have this. This is, what are you going to do in your professional practice to improve? What's your professional learning goal, and how are you going to achieve that? The one in the middle obviously is a huge one, student learning goal. What goal is going to impact student learning directly? And all of these should, by the way, but that one's clearly articulated in that manner. And then district improvement goal for the superintendent, it's unique, this goal obviously for the whole district. And I'll break those out further in this presentation. And below is just some of the resources. This goals for today were drafted upon self-evaluation I talked about, using the superintendent evaluation rubric. my initial entry findings after spending a year in the district and living it, the district strategic plan, which expires in 2023. So I was able to take pieces of that out that are aligned with the pillars, and feedback from the 2021 school committee evaluation of me. There was some really good feedback by you all, and I wanted to make sure you all knew that that information is included in these goals this year. And that's how we make improvements. And I use my feedback same way we'd expect our educators to get feedback from the administrators to use to improve. So everything we'll see tonight, the goal is to model this for everybody. Wouldn't ask anything from me that we wouldn't ask any other educator to do. And so the 4 performance standards in the rubric are instructional leadership, family and community engagement, management and operations, and professional culture. I'll break that down a little bit in my goals as well. So that's what you all, school committee will rate me on at the end of the year. And so this is a little unique. This is not called for in the goal setting plan, but it's something I felt was successful. And part of my conversations with folks in the district, staff, families, students, they like the idea of having the pillars because I think what sometimes happens in education, we have so much going on that if we have a 40-page strategic plan and it sits on the shelf and we don't really have specified focal points, we can lose focus and be distracted. So this was sent home early in the year to folks. And again, based on the feedback I received, living here a year, your feedback, leadership team's feedback, staff feedback, community, I took all that in and felt that this was a good balance for this year. The home away from home for students, you know, what that simply means is that we spend a lot of time in school. We want it to be a place that people enjoy being, that we all learn, that we all have respect for one another, that we all want to push and challenge each other. So it doesn't replace the home. It, you know, hopefully just an extension of that. And so that's what we mean by that. And certainly as the year goes on and the years go on, we'll try to show examples of that. And climate and culture is one where you do that with personalized learning for every student. And it talks here about, and again, I'm not going to read this all to you, but relationships is the key thing here. So we want to build this collaboration with not only each other as staff and faculty and students, but families. We're coming off a pandemic, a lot of Zoom meetings, a lot of stressful, polarizing issues that we've had to deal with over the last several, I'd say over a year, right? Over a year and a half with the pandemic, and it hasn't gone away. And so the goal here is to try to unify everybody, and doesn't mean we all have to agree, but we all want to do so civilly, and we want to be able to model that for our kids. So that's a lot what that is. It talks about having a seat at the table, which is a voice. We want to emphasize that for everybody, parents, students, faculty, school committee, certainly, and community members. And so that's kind of where that one goes. And I think down the bottom, it talks about taking ownership and developing and maintaining a dynamic students learning environment. So we don't want to lose fact of, you know, the kids are here to learn, but we should all be modeling that. We all should be learning. So that's kind of the personalization piece. We're collaborating in this work. We're in this together. I think no one would, of all the polarizing issues that we've had, I don't think no one disagrees the fact that we're here for our kids, our Scituate kids, and the adults. But the kids are our primary goal, and to do what's best for them. So I think starting from a place of that collaboration and providing opportunities for families to be part of that, where we maybe have been restricted somewhat last year, and having more conversations together. For example, and I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but I'll be, I'll be having, I don't know what I'm going to call them yet, opportunities for parents to meet with me. Groups of parents to come in. We'll do some in person, and we'll do a Zoom one for those that it's more comfortable and convenient for, but just an open forum just to have conversations about what community members and families feel is going well and what we can improve on, and just to get their feedback. So again, I expect to model anything I would ask of our staff. And then the culture of excellence breaks it down into academic and personal. how do we achieve at the highest levels? How do we have high expectations for ourselves and our students? The part I like here is the collective responsibility to do whatever it takes. So that means if the normal run-of-the-mill things aren't working, and back to that, it connects nicely with the top part here with personalization. If we've got a student that, geez, we've tried everything. Okay, I'm going to go reach out to a colleague and we're going to do whatever it takes to help this child succeed. Or we're going to help this family to succeed. Or we're going to help this teacher to succeed. So we have to do whatever it takes, which is, it separates the average districts with ones that are the best in the world, in my opinion. So that's the culture of excellence there. So I'll pause there and see if anybody has any questions on the pillars. Okay. So here's the student learning goal. And what I do here is I attempt to tie it back into the pillars. So I expressly take the first sentence from that pillar, expectation that our focus is, from the second pillar is academic and personal excellence for all. And so instructional practices in all settings, so where expectations are the same everywhere, reflect high expectations regarding content and quality of effort and work. Engage all students. And that, and that doesn't mean compliance. It means, that our students are actually interested in part of the conversation and enjoying learning and seeing how it's applicable in real life. That's the goal. And our personalized, you see the word personalized again here, to diverse learning styles. And what that means is, that all students have, access to all the learning in the curriculum we have, and then their readiness. So that's a lot that's taken right from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. And so what I try to do in the focus areas is break that down into more layman's terms so that folks that aren't familiar maybe with all of the vernacular up top can understand this. And then on the right, the indicators of student success will be more outcomes, which are evidence that the goal was met or that something's happening towards the attainment of that goal. And then at a later date, I'll be able to come back and show you what has been done. So the focus areas, setting the expectation that each and every student can successfully accelerate their learning regardless of starting point. A big emphasis from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education this year is we want to accelerate learning. We don't want to assume that it was a lost year and we're going to slow everything down. Let's continue to move forward. And so I think that's an important point there. And so we'll do that, and you do it. Obviously, we're taking each student's needs into consideration. And then I'll go down all the ones on the left and then I'll go on the right. Provide students with expanded high quality opportunities for personal growth and excellence in academic, artistic, and athletic experiences in and beyond the classroom. This we're trying, we're here to develop the whole child so that we've got the academic piece certainly of key importance, but we also want to provide in that personalized piece opportunities for kids to enjoy other things in their life that they're interested in. And so we'll be watching that. And again, opportunities are huge, and the best schools have the most opportunities for kids. And so my goal would be that every child participates in something else outside of the academics that they enjoy and have a passion for, and that we have that opportunity to provide them. Next one talks about unifying and simplifying the district systems and communication platforms. We have a whole new leadership team here basically, and it's great to have a fresh pair of eyes on all the systems we have, because that can really bog a school district down. So we're looking at ways to improve that. Something as simple as last year, we were using Outlook and Google for emails, and they weren't talking to each other, and people were picking which one they had. And we made the decision, we use Google Classroom, let's move to Google. We moved to Google, and it was seamless, and the communication is much easier for everybody. So that's just one example, and we're basically finding a lot of things that we can simplify as a district with the end game of allowing teachers to teach, and to kind of get this red tape and other things that may bog us down out of the way. So in year 2 for me and a couple of the other central office staff, in year 1 for others in our central office, we're identifying things that we certainly can improve, and we're looking forward to sharing those with you as we move to make those more user-friendly. And the next one is establish cohesive district PD opportunities. That's professional development to support all staff. And so what we're really working on is, just like our students, our staff and the adults need to be excited about learning too. And those opportunities should tie back into these goals. If we're working on certain goals, that time should align with the opportunities we're preparing for staff. So when we have those, you see those on the calendar, folks, that talks about a half day and it's PD for teachers. That's what we're talking about here. So we have a committee that's a mixed group of administrators and teachers that have that work together to come up with this. So we're excited to share with you those opportunities, with the goal being that it ties back into our goals, our district goals and vision, and that the teachers are getting the most of it. In fact, we had the first 3 days of professional development already before school started. And then on the 16th, there was a half day. We had other professional development. And Ms. Driscoll, was able to survey the staff, and it's at a later point, we'll be sharing that with our staff and giving them feedback. But just, that's one example of a process where we're listening. We want to know, how the staff felt about the PD opportunities that we provided so that we can be the best district in the world. Some districts don't ask and don't want to know, they just keep going, but we want to know, and we ask to be graded. Grade us, and why. And so we're collecting feedback. It's just an example, and we're always asking our staff, how can we do it better? How can we personalize it for you to make you the best teacher you can be? And then members of the district leadership team will be pursuing 2 student learning goals, one that advances district pillar 1 and one that advances district pillar 2. This is new this year, and this is an expectation clearly stating that our central office team, our principals, our leadership team is going to be aligning themselves with these goals. But you notice how I don't prescribe that they have to use Burkhead's goal 1. They have to look at the pillar 1 and pillar 2, and how can they advance? If I'm a principal, how can I advance our school on pillar 1? Because every school is a little bit unique, but if we're all working towards that collaboration and personalization, and all schools are doing that, and the central office staff is doing that, and we're all working on pillar 2, academic and personal excellence, and that's reflected in our goals. And that's a great example of everybody working towards the same goal, but also individualizing things so that you have some power over how you want to improve things. So on the right here is just some examples of how we can, and again, these aren't exhaustive. These are just some things now, because things will come up where we can say, okay, that's a good data point to show that we've accomplished this goal. So, establish a guaranteed, viable, and transparent curriculum involving the school community in the process. I think we've all been hungry to talk more about curriculum. And I think there was one of our best meetings in a while was our last meeting when Ms. Driscoll, gave a kind of a sample of some of the data and some of the curriculum. And again, hopefully you're seeing in the Thursday thoughts that we've committed to having central office folks each report out, and Ms. Driscoll focusing on that curriculum. And when you went to expectation nights, you'll see that we have parent-friendly documents, because we're, again, trying to accomplish that connection with home and to educate the community and our families about what we're teaching in school and where we're getting this information. So that'll be a year-long and multi-year long process, but it's going to be transparent. And we're going to involve the community in the process. And what we mean by that is, and Ms. Driscoll mentioned this at her presentation, is we're going to do a needs assessment, and we're going to ask folks, what's working for you, what do you need to know, those kind of things, and that'll involve everybody. So that's what that one talks about. And ultimately, what a guaranteed viable curriculum looks like is one that all students have an equal opportunity to access, that they have highly effective teachers in the classroom, and that they have the access to the same content, skills, and knowledge. So we have that all out there. What we're going to work to do is to make it very user-friendly and accessible to families in the community, so that we can have a one-stop shop where you can go in there and find everything you need to know. And so that's a year-long process that we'll be working on. Leadership opportunities for admin staff that transfer into innovative learning in our classrooms. So we've started a couple of teams that will be working, and will be they're chaired by administrators and or teacher leaders or coordinators. And one of those is an acceleration group. And with that group and that particular category we'll be working on is in tapping into our staff, innovative and creative ideas to support our students. So what cool, great things can we do to help our students that may have fallen a little bit behind during the pandemic? Those kids that did great, but we want to push them to the next level. What great things can we accomplish for them? And these things are the extras. And these are some of the things we'll be sharing with you. We're using some of our ESSER money on, is to start before and after school programs, for example, maybe some weekend programming. And then this is a great way to identify, if these things work and these become best practices, we can now use them in our classrooms, or we can support them maybe in our next budget. So it's a really great way to support all kids. We're not just targeting a few. We're going to make these opportunities available to all kids. And there's going to be several different opportunities. So that's in the works. And the reason I bring this up in this level of detail is because it talks about opportunities for leadership. We're going to ask our staff to come up with some of these ideas and then go and teach and do these things and act as the educator for these before and after school programs or weekend programs. So not only do they have the opportunity to come up with great ideas that they have that are out there, because there's plenty, they have the opportunity to lead those for our students and their colleagues. We're doing the same for professional development. Part of the rubric for teachers on professional development to be exemplary is that you have to model your craft. So we have to provide those teachers, which we have, great teachers, the opportunity to model that for other teachers. So we'll be looking for teacher leaders to volunteer to come out once our PD is established and come out and do that PD. Sometimes it's appropriate to outsource that to consultants, but if you've got a lot of people within your district that have multiple degrees and that are really passionate and good at things, we think you should start there. So that's, again, not only are our students getting multiple opportunities, we believe that our staff should also have multiple leadership opportunities and opportunities to innovate. And then the next one, we've talked about data to assess strengths and areas of growth with solutions. So that one, again, we started talking a little bit about that at the end of the last meeting with curriculum. MCAS is coming out. We have benchmarks coming out. I think you're going to see a lot more this year of us reporting on data to show where we are and educating the community on how we use that data, what it is, what we value, and just to be patient with that because there's multiple data points that we look at. It's just not one thing. It's not just MCAS. It's a lot of things. So we'll be working on collecting that and sharing that with the community in the school committee. And the solutions piece is, okay, if we've got areas of growth, how are we addressing them using the data? So the data say, okay, our K through 2, for example, is lacking in our ELA scores, and we have to kind of improve our literacy, for example, if the data, enough data points are telling us that. Okay, so here's our solution, here's our problem, and now here's our solution, how we address that. So that's kind of open-ended because we haven't looked at and received all that data yet. So that's what that means. But we tend to use it more this year than we did last year for sure. Examples of improved systems communication platforms. I gave you one already, and I think I went pretty deep on this one. But again, as we uncover things and revise things, another example may be, we're looking at some technology safety program software that's out there that can allow us to, monitor things while students are on, school Chromebooks or online with using our logins during the school day. If they type in, anything that's unsafe or that's dangerous or things like that, we can use that as a portal potentially to proactively work with students. And again, if and when that does happen, that will be shared in detail on what that is and what it looks like before we ever roll anything out like that. But those are some thoughts of things we're working on right now. PD opportunities reflective of district goals and vision. I went over that, self-explanatory. And then to coincide with asking all the district leaders to move one of the pillars forward, so we all are, their goals should reflect evidence like mine here do of successfully advancing each of the district pillars. So that's goal 1. Questions on that?
Bill, I have a question about the indicators. Could you go back to the first bullet and define again what the school community looks like? That's and that you're involving with the curriculum.
So the curriculum involving the school community in the process, what does that mean?
Yeah, what does that
Yeah.
look like?
Yeah,
Again,
so that's, and again, Ms. Driscoll touched on this, that's a needs assessment that we'll be
Okay.
sending out, and I haven't seen the details of it, but Ms. Driscoll's working on that, but it will be some form of a survey to the community with prescribed questions regarding curriculum, with families allowed to give input on curriculum. And so when she's up, she might be able to answer that question better than I have, again, but the point here is that that's part of our process to be transparent, is we have to ask the community, where they're at with our curriculum. Do they know it exists? Do they know where to find it? Do they know what their students learning? Where would they need support? And those kind of things. So there'll be that kind of questioning going on with not only our staff, but also our community in that respect.
Okay, no, I'm all for the transparency piece. I was just curious because we have to go by what DESE, what their curriculum guidelines are. So I don't know how much leeway we have.
Yeah, well, I would clarify that, we're not asking the community to write our curriculum. I think it would be more how it's being received, how they understand it, what
Okay.
they would like to know, in any open-ended, just what, how can we do better with our curriculum? And so it would be more questions like that. Yes, but you are correct. We are, we do
Right.
follow the state standards, and, it will not be an opportunity for folks to rewrite our curriculum in any ways. We're more both.
Yeah, thank you.
Mike, I didn't know if
Bill,
you
I
were going to go ahead.
All right, you go ahead.
Well, Superintendent Berger, I'm just curious. I first appreciate the detailed explanation that you provided. So if I'm looking at this goal and thinking about the sort of aims of this goal and the data you're going to collect, I'm struggling a little bit because it feels like things are being mixed a bit. And so I can give you an example. So in the goal, you talk about, well, first in the leadership goal, it says student learning. And then in the goal, it talks about ensuring instructional practices in all settings. And so when I look at that second column, which says indicators of student success, when I read those bullets and I think about the data you're going to collect, that's actually in my mind, not measures of student success. It's measures of what your team and the district were going to do to contribute to student success. And so I just want to be really clear in terms of, for this goal, is the focus on the mechanisms, the curriculum, the approaches, the data use, and the, you said communication tools versus actual measures of student outcomes and success. And I hope that question makes sense.
Yes, it certainly does. And I answered to the best of my ability. So that second slide, I believe I show you where the superintendent goals are at the bottom, and then they go all the way up to the teacher goals. So the teacher goals will be much more in detail than this and impact the students directly. So my goals won't necessarily talk about the students, although we may share, for example, MCAS data or benchmarks on the district level. At the school level, they'll be dealing with each individual child and have their own classroom goals that will reflect student learning. So it'll look, mine definitely is a sky view, a larger view, but those arrows indicated that the principals will have more narrow goals, and then the teachers will have the most specific goals to those student learning. And the objective is that if my goals can be communicated well enough to the administrators and to the teachers, then that's where the student learning impacts is most seen. Did Mr. Long have a question as well?
Yeah, I actually had a similar question regarding, for the first bullet, you talk about accelerating student learning. In the third bullet on the indicators, you talk about using data. And a lot of the things you mentioned were state data that we get back. But I guess my question is, what kind of internal data are we going to use, and how often are we going to use it to make sure that as you continue to accelerate student learning, kids aren't starting to fall behind, and we're halfway through the curriculum, but some kid is only a quarter of the way through because he or she is having trouble either keeping up or grasping the concepts.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good question. Again, when those 4 teams that we have an assessment team, and that team will be used to kind of look at our data with the principals ultimately, and the classroom teachers will be looking at their school data. We do have benchmark tests, DIBELS, and other tests for elementary. Middle school, high school, not as many. So we have to look at that, where we get our benchmarking from that. And you simply can't use grades all the time because it's sometimes subjective. So we'll have to look at what we have. And that's why I kind of let it generic right now until Ms. Driscoll gets involved and we get our team set up and start looking at what assessments we use, how often we use those, and then when we share them. So it'll be, the multiple assessments we already have in place, the benchmarks. And then with those groups that I talked about, those innovative thoughts, do we have other ways of benchmarking and looking at internal data in a more, I guess, timely manner to measure that outcomes and that success.
Okay, I think hearing that information back in one of our meetings on a semi-regular basis, whether it's every other month or every 3 months or whatever it is, will be good to hear, just so that we can, track the progress across the board throughout the school year.
Agreed.
And then for the systems that you were talking about, I know, from experience with my own children, some of the online applications that we have available, whether it's Lexia or some of the other things that are out there, were a huge help. I think it was usually the last year or the year before, some of the licenses only allow kids to use them during the day. But if we can continue to have something like that for our students, available at home. So if they want to, get caught up or continue to, hammer a point home so that they get it fully, would, definitely be helpful. And then my last question for you. So, obviously we're 3 months into the school year now, but from a budgeting perspective, do we think we have funding this year that we can potentially, when we start to see areas that we need to fill in, do we have the budget space to, fill some of those gaps in, or is that something that we might have to wait until next year's budget to, to add in to our district?
No, I think we've budgeted that in. Also, I think we've wisely used our ESSER2 funds to help support that in these acceleration groups that will be meeting. Is their target is to establish what those things are, identify. Another example to follow up on your question is to use the data that we have to find out what kids are struggling. We've already got data from last year, early data this year, and target those students with some of the supports that group is coming up with, an acceleration group, but then also look at students that are, either doing well or extremely well, and also challenge them for other innovative ways. So there'll be multiple options that meet different kids at different places, is the goal. And in your example of including that after school software, I think is certainly something we could do as well. That's an easy fix. But that ESSER money was targeted toward these specific innovative ideas that we want to use with all children.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, try goal 2. Okay, so this is district improvement goal. Again, this aligns with the first pillar. Climate and culture provides personalized learning for every student, built in a strong student, staff, family, business, community. Relationships is the big word here. Again, very similar, aligning with the pillar I talked about, a unification with safety. Students have a voice, created with respect, treated fairly and appreciated. It's hard to argue with that. And I break it down a little bit in the focus areas here. And so on the left here, placing the highest priority on student, staff, physical and social, emotional safety and security. Obviously, after and during a pandemic, that's going to be an issue we want to look at closely. And again, it's adults and students. And, as we look to accomplish this goal, we'll be defining what safety looks like and make sure we communicate that out. So we're working on that now, and certainly the physical safety we have been working on, as you know, for the last year and a half, and we'll continue to make that our biggest priority. But we want to also let folks know that we're looking at ways to support our students, social, emotionally, and our staff. Valuing families and members of the community as assets and partners in their children or children's school community. Again, this is the partnership with, reaching out, and it's back to opportunities. We can't say we're a family-friendly school just by responding to emails. I think we have to create opportunities where we're welcoming people into our buildings, whether it's physically coming in for opportunities like expectations nights, or having, virtual conversations with leadership, those types of things, including all the things that we're able to run more smoothly this year so far than we did last year, like clubs and activities and sports and things like that, where parents can attend and be part of the school community. So I think that's a really important one. Establishing a home away from home, climate and culture in each building and across the district. Again, I look forward to this. You've already seen some things going out there that each school is doing to, celebrate. The climate, in my opinion, is the feel of the school's attitude, the heart and soul of the school. When you walk into a school, they say in the first 5 minutes, and I think personally I agree with this, you can tell the climate of the school. Is there student work up on the walls? Are the people that you meet friendly and welcoming? Is it an inviting place? You can feel that. You can feel that climate, but it takes work. So we really want to make sure we're doing that. And the culture is the underlying, how are things really done? Here's what it says in the handbook, how are we doing it? And those two, if they align and you're doing things really well, you've got a lot of people that are happy to be there and happy to move the agenda forward. And you've got families that are trusting. And the word that I haven't put in here that I want to share is trust. We're going to work hard on building trust this year with all of you listening and all of our community and our staff as our new leadership team gets into its second year. I think that's really important. And then we work through this pandemic together and start to unify. I think it starts with building trust. So what we say we need to do. Members of the district leadership team, again, this is the same as in the previous one, just to reinforce that the expectation is for both goals that we'll be hitting on both pillars. Again, examples of safety and social emotional learning best practices. I think this comes from where, what Dr. Bukowski talked about, that I want to see what our teachers come up with as we challenge them to hit these two pillars. And that will be some of my evidence that I share. How is this being done in the classroom? What are the best things that are happening in our school that are showing examples that we're reaching the kids social emotionally, that we're checking on them, that we're providing supports when needed, those type of things at the ground level. And then at the district level too, what are we supporting that provides, help for everybody? And then again, the next one gets into examples of opportunities provided families and the community members, organizations to be included as active partners in the district and school community. Some of this could be a survey on how you felt connected to the school. Did you felt connected to the school or the district? In what ways? So those are some ways. In that outcome, for example, and this is really year one after going through the COVID, where in that example, if we do a survey and get that data, well, that's not necessarily the end game of that outcome. What do we do with that data? What do we do if I hear that, okay, we put out all these programs where we want a community to come in and meet with us and get involved, and then we do a survey and we find that only 30% felt connected or involved. And then we start asking why and how we can get that number up to 80 or 90 the following year. So some of these are ongoing, just so you know that, because it's the first year we've had the outcome side of this thing. And to have more concrete numbers for you and specific targets. It is a little ambiguous this year because it's coming after the COVID and into my second year, so I will admit that. But I did want to give you that one example of, okay, we're collecting a lot of information this year too, but we'll also be helpful to use in upcoming years to improve on that as we get a baseline for some of the stuff. And then again, I get survey results for climate and culture. We'll be working with principals on how to get the teachers, students, and families involved in reporting back on how they felt. They felt welcome. Do they feel important? Do they feel respected? And then to offer some, feedback on open-ended stuff like why or why not. And again, so that's just baseline data. We'll collect that, and then we have to have action steps to how to use that to improve. And then this one is just again aligned with the other goal of having the district leadership team show evidence like I will, so that we're all kind of, and again, I can take some of that from our teachers and our leadership team to share with you from the classroom level all the way up to the district level, some examples of attainment of some of these focus areas.
Can I ask a quick question,
Of course.
Superintendent? So just to sort of summarize, so you're thinking collect, so like you said, I think that was a really excellent point about how this is almost like a baseline time, because we don't have, like, pre-pandemic is pre-pandemic, and then we have what has happened and continues to happen to some degree here. And then as we move forward and kind of try to, advance, as you say, like through academics and SEL. So we kind of need the baseline for SEL as well as climate and culture, and then whatever data comes out of that to analyze, and then sort of further put through some action steps from the data that you collect. So this, I guess my question in this is, it's definitely a multi-year process, probably.
Yes, and I 100% agree. And I think, pointing that out, that, what I'd like to come in and say, and this is what I've done in my previous jobs as principal, come out and say, we found some areas of weakness in our ninth grade math scores. And we're going to see our MCAS scores go up by 10% in, MCAS math this year. And we have hardcore numbers and goals that we can look at. And the same thing, we've done a survey last year where we found out that 40% of our students felt connected to at least one adult in the building. This year we're going to go for 75%, and then have action steps on how we're going to do that. So you can expect that this is a baseline. It's a little nebulous because of, COVID. And if you can remember last year, the surveys were all about, should we go hybrid? Should we go, all in, and why? So those aren't necessarily, usable for this year. So some of these things we do have to start fresh with. And that's okay. But I wanted you all to know that we will be collecting this information, and some of this will have results and action plans and completion, and some of it will carry over into the next year. But we'll be more specific as we gather our first set of real data, if you will.
I guess just piggyback on Nicole's question, which I thought was a really good one. And I don't want to sound like a broken record. I'm like coming to this new, I know. Again, when you say examples of safety and social emotional learning best practices, I appreciate that you'll collect examples, and I think that's a great start. I just also want to sort of reiterate that this is not necessarily data of student success, because we really need data collected at the aggregate about how that is being received, right? Because not everyone's going to receive it in a way that we hope that they'll receive it. So I'm just wondering, Superintendent Burkhead, even though I know the teachers are going to get into the data collection granularly, what will you be collecting at the aggregate that says, I have these examples, and these are how students and then community in the second bullet responded to these things, and this is how we're iterating for the next sort of go round, if that makes sense.
It does, and that's exactly what we'll do. And I think it's a great point. Yes. Yep. Any other questions on that? Okay. These next two goals are professional practice goals for me as superintendent. To participate and complete year 2 of the Massachusetts Association of School Superintendents new Superintendent Induction Program. And that's a 3-year program for those of you that are unfamiliar with it. Just kind of put on the left what they're all about. And basically it's about mentoring superintendents with retired superintendents. Very similar to what we may do with our teachers. So I learn curriculum, I learn budgeting, I learn all the things, management, leadership styles. We have in person, we have networking groups that meet. I have a coach that comes to a lot of stuff that I run here, like a leadership meeting, a faculty meeting I join. Will just kind of see me in action and give me feedback. So it's a really good process. I'm really getting a lot out of it. And so on the right, I just kind of, and there's a lot of things I have to complete. It's like taking a, college level course. So I'll have to produce all that and get their sign off at the end of the year that I've completed everything. I completed year 1, so this is year 2. So this will likely be a 3rd year goal for me as well. And I appreciate the school committee support and allowing me to be in this program. Again, I will reiterate, it's really been wonderful to learn things, but to also network and to meet other superintendents, because when stuff happens, it's a great opportunity to just go reach out to 10 or 15 superintendents, especially second year ones now, first year back last year. Hey, what are you guys doing for this? Or what are you all doing for that? How are you handling this? It's great to network. It's important. So that's one good thing. And also to go to my coach and mentor and say, hey, I've got this issue. What do you think? As a person that it was, has done the job, it's good to get that feedback. Also, just the, we had our first in-person meeting this year, earlier in the year, and it was wonderful. So again, that's that. I think it's important that I stick with that, complete it, and I'm getting a lot out of it. So any questions on that one?
No questions from me. I think it's just great modeling because, as teachers have mentors as well, I think it's nice that leadership has mentors and kind of models that for staff and children, because I think it's an important thing for, I don't know. I mean, it's just best practices in life, I think, to look towards those that have walked in the shoes,
And so I went to the Gates faculty meeting last week, and my coach wanted to come, and I was speaking about, the vision and stuff and talking to them about it. And I was lucky I brought her because she was the only one that sat at the table with me. And I joked with the staff. I said, oh, wow. And so they'll get to know me, but that was pretty funny. But, just coming to those things, and I agree with you that, and I'm proud to share this, that I'm a lifelong learner. I love to learn. And this thing, this is a labor of love because it's a lot of work, but it's also really helped me in my growth as a superintendent. So I really respect and value the program. So.
And Bill, you've shown that over the past year, and I'm hoping that continues to grow, because usually when you come in making a decision, you say, oh, I've talked to these 4 superintendents, or I've reached out to these other districts to get feedback. And we talk about being the best district in the world, but part of that is looking outside of ourselves and figuring out the best way to do it. So I'm glad you're continuing that and, providing that feedback to us as you come in and present things.
Yes, and thank you. And I think that's the same when we look at decisions we make. We bounced it off all our area superintendents and what are you doing? And so there's a lot of conversations going. So it's no decisions are made in silos here. So I think that's great. Thank you for the feedback on that. The last goal is a really important one. I think almost all the candidates that ran for the open seat talked about one of our major issues being some of our physical structures, including the Hatherley and the Cushing School. This is a multi-year, very prescribed process from the MSBA, but an unbelievable opportunity for the town of Scituate, our community, our kids. Even if your child may not go there, it's really needed. As for anyone that knows that the 2 schools knows that, and to be reimbursed a substantial amount of money for it, it's, those waiting lists are long, and I know Scituate was on it for a few years, so to get accepted into the program is really important. So this will be obviously one of my major goals is, although I have experience in opening 2 schools, I haven't as a superintendent. So this is great for me to really work on this as a professional practice goal so that I really have laser focus on it and this thing succeeds. So what I've shared on the left, and just to update on people on the first phase, which we're in, is called the eligibility phase. And it's a 270-day phase that started July 1 and goes through through March. We hope to finish that early, because if we do that, we can move the whole project a little earlier. And it's a process that asks for a lot of different things and a lot of different deadlines. I'll have a lot of help. I know Dr. Dutch has been very integral in this. Heidi's been involved. The principals of each building, Ms. Ward and Ms. Moffett, have been instrumental in getting us information. But the town, we have a larger committee, and I want to thank those that volunteer. We have a lot of professionals, architects that have volunteered to be on the building committee and things like that. So we've got a real strong committee, a really knowledgeable committee that's going to help us through this process. So my goal of indicator on success on the right is to meet all the timelines and benchmarks by the end of this 270-day period, with movement into the feasibility and schematic design phase, which is the next phase, and which is the phase where you hire a architect, and Dr. Dutch will have to help me with this other one. I think it's operations manager, OPM, the P stands for, but he'll get it for me, who advocates for us and watches over our best interest in the process. Then you start having those conversations with the community and the building committee on what's the need of the district. You know, how many students school are you looking at? Are you combining the two schools? What curriculum are you going to offer? What's, you know, so it's our way to really get community feedback, get our district feedback, school committee feedback. And that next phase is where the ideas start getting laid to work, which could happen. It will happen as early as this year. The next hurdle we have will be a special town meeting vote on supporting, I believe it's $1.1 million feasibility and schematic design phase process. And that position, by the way, is owner project manager, OPM. So I've gone before the Board of Selectmen to share this information to get on to the warrant. And they're voting on that tomorrow night, I believe. So I'll be present there tomorrow night too, to speak if I have to on behalf of this process and why it's important. You know, but just as an aside, and Dr. Dutch is doing a real nice job for when we get to the feasibility and schematic phase to show the community, because that next phase will be ultimately you have to ask for the financial support of the project through town meeting. And, you know, just showing the money that we are looking at to replace roofs, replace walls, all that kind of stuff. You know, we're going to end up paying a lot more in the long run for dilapidated schools than we would building a new one and getting reimbursed for it. So that's the case we'll have to make when we're working on in part 2 of that, which will likely be next year's goal. So that's that goal, and I'll take any questions on that. So I guess I appreciate your questions from the school committee. And if things come up, again, a lot of this with the data collection and things like that are fluid. And certainly if you have some ideas as we go through, I'll be communicating these, we'll be bringing these up because we are looking at a baseline year, but we're certainly open to your recommendations and considerations as we go through. Don't have to be tonight, but again, that's the good news with this. It is kind of our baseline year with a new team. So we're always taking input as we want to improve. So that's kind of the outline of what we're looking at for this year.
Thank you, Superintendent Burkhead. And this is something that's only on the agenda tonight for a discussion. So are you looking for a vote on this at our next meeting on the 4th?
That would be great.
Hey, Mike, I just have one, I guess, question, comment for Superintendent Burkhead. Superintendent Burkhead, thanks very much for that. I think it was helpful, informative, and I think that you have taken a lot of what the community and the school committee has mentioned over the past year and implemented that into your goals. I just have one question. I don't necessarily need an answer today. It's kind of a combination of things. You know, obviously, I'm not going to say you're famous for it, but, you know, I think that you came into this job and you've been consistent every meeting and every opportunity to say that we want to be the best district in the world. Actually, through the interview process of the open school committee position, one of the candidates did make mention of it, and I also had it written down leading into this, or leading into the interviews, was what makes us the best district in the world. And I asked that because kind of a combination of things. Number one is often we hear, you know, when Boston Magazine or Boston Globe or whatever comes out with the state's best schools, you know, you get ranked on certain criteria and we have to figure out what makes those schools best. Whether or not we want to be at the top of that, I have no idea. But I thought that it might be interesting to determine, number one, what makes the best district in the world? And then number two, do you think it makes sense to look at creating our own ranking of what we want our district to succeed at? I guess it would be more just data that was driven from your goals. And I know it's kind of a long question and it's kind of deep, in-depth question. I don't necessarily need an answer, but something I thought might be worthwhile for discussion at some point, if that makes any sense.
Yes, I think it's a great question. No one's asked me that. Maybe in the interview they asked me, and I hope I have the same answer because it's my core value. You know, I look at the best district in the world as defined by us, the community of Scituate. We define that, right? Because it's tough to compare, you know, if you just go by just numbers. There's so much more than that to me anyways. And I think we have to do that. And I think phase one of this is creating that culture and climate of acceptance, inclusivity, belonging, unity. I think once we get that down and we get our academics at a place where we're raising the bar and we're moving everybody along, then we can start defining together what our core values and beliefs are as a community and what we think is what defines the best school district in the world. So I'm not going to answer that from a personal level because I look at it as a community answer that we don't have the answer to. But I also look at it as kind of perfection or excellence, where we never will quite get there, but we always strive to be there, which means we never get complacent, which means we're always asking ourselves, and it is a little bit rhetorical, you know, what makes you, and I ask, for example, what makes you the best parent in the world? What makes you the best teacher in the world? What makes you the best paraprofessional, the best bus driver? I ask this to all of our staff, and I can't define that for them. I can only lay out by getting feedback, what I did tonight, the vision and the general architecture of the pillars based on what I've learned from all of you. And then we need to kind of define that over the next couple of years. And that'll be through feedback and through establishing core values for our school. Our portrait of a graduate is another example. It's what working backwards, for example, is, okay, what does a graduate of Scituate schools look like that we want every student to achieve? And if we get there, then we are the best district in the world because they've achieved all of these things. And that's the whole child. So in a nutshell, Mr. Gates, I think it'll take a few years to develop that, but I love challenging people to first define that and what terms it means of your role in the district. It might be a school committee member and a parent. It could be a principal. It could be a teacher. I have this conversation with people all the time, especially I meet every new hire we hire. I personally meet them. I welcome them. I share my 2 cents of what I think it is. And I say to every single hire here that nobody's more important than anybody else, especially in my job. In fact, research will show that the number one most influential impact on student learning is teacher in the classroom, not the superintendent. So we have to have great teachers. We have to support them. That's one example that I would give as a core value. We have to have supportive and engaged families. And that's on us as a school district to provide those opportunities. So these are some of my bullet points of what I look at as the best district in the world. We have to have climate and culture where people are excited to come to work on the staff. Kids are happy and excited to be here. They're learning at high levels, and that families are satisfied with the schools, with their teachers, with their administrators. And everybody is hungry to improve, that no one's ever complacent, because I think that's the most dangerous thing in any line of work. If you're going to be the best, you get complacent. And I'll just end with a little bit of one of my favorite books, Good to Great, from Jim Collins. He analyzed a lot of businesses and what made, and he talks about the enemy of great is good, because when people tell you you're good, you're happy with that. If we have a good school district, why change anything? Let's be good. Everyone loves to be good, but there lies the complacency where you don't get to great. You don't challenge yourself. You don't push yourself. And what I'd like to see in our district this year is a sense of urgency that, hey, we're all kind of been leveled the playing field with this COVID. Let's get out the gate and be the best district in the world by starting thinking innovatively and doing what's best for our kids. And let's do it together. We need our family support and help. And so that's kind of where we're going. And you probably get that from the 2 pillars. So a long way of saying that I've got my own personal views on it, and I will share a little bit of that with you tonight, and happy to have any conversation with anybody. But I always like hearing what other people say. And I will ask you that. And I think you all should be prepared. At some point, I'm going to say, you know, what makes you the best school committee member in the world, and what makes you the best parent in the world, and all that kind of stuff. And if people are able to share with me, I'd love to hear it, because I'm going to write it down, and you're going to start seeing trends develop. So we're going to start seeing through our surveys and our work this year that a lot of our families value something that's very important. And I'll end with this. It's no one data point. And I know that the US News World Report has been brought up. You know, I think what we have to do is we have to have part of one of our presentations is to break down what that report measures and how it changes and why certain things in there may be important to look at, but why the whole thing is not an end all to who we are. All right, and that's our job this year, is to kind of make sure that we educate the community on you measure what you value, what we're measuring, why it's important, and how we're going to make it better. And so if we all start thinking that we're going to be the best district in the world, if we all are the best at what we do and contribute, and no one's more important than anyone else, but we're all contributing, that's how we get there.
Great, thank you. No, I think it, and my question was more, or my comment was that I think that your goals are in line with helping to create that best district in the world. We just need to know what that best district looks like. And I don't anticipate that anyone knows what that looks right now. So I fully support and agree with all that you're doing.
And thank you. And did you rate me well on that when I interviewed for the job on that question?
I don't remember.
Thank you.
And Peter, one of the things
I hired
coming
too
out of-
many people since you, Bill.
And, you know, one thing coming out of the superintendent's goals is obviously the school committee goals that we set for ourselves. So Peter, to the points that you were just making, you know, we need to look at what we want to see as the best school district in the world from a school committee, from a community perspective, and make sure that, one, that lines up with what the district is doing, but also make sure that, you know, we're looking at Superintendent Burkhead and the administration and pushing them to continue to be that best district. And now that we have a full school committee again, I'll be reaching out to the four of you in the near future with some dates. And I've reached out to Mask to see if they can help we can leverage them like we did last year to create our own school committee goals, have them viewed and approved hopefully in October. And then, you know, we can help track to that so that we can look at Bill, and when he asks the question, who's the best, why are you the best school committee member in the world, we can say, here's why. And, you know, have that feedback and not, you know, look and smile and come up with something on the fly. Any last questions for Superintendent Burkhead? Well, thank you for presenting those goals, Bill. And, you know, we'll bring that up for vote at the next meeting.
Thank you.
And the next item on the agenda is the Assistant Superintendent's Leadership Report. Ms. Driscoll.
Hi, thank you for having me. I just have a couple things to share with you. The first thing is that you should know that tomorrow the state is releasing the MCAS scores publicly. So some people have been asking us about some information about them. They're still embargoed today, so we can't share anything this meeting, but we will during the next meeting. Parents should be on the lookout for the parent reports in early October. That's when those should be coming home. And like I said, we're doing a district report at the next school committee meeting. That's in short about MCAS. And there's a resource I wanted to make sure that I shared with everybody. May I share my screen? Is that okay?
Yeah, please do.
All right, thank you. Okay, you should see the Scituate Public Schools website. So if anyone goes to district info and assistant superintendent, I've added, or Emily has added, a link called Family Guides. The reason why I put this up here is because after that first presentation that I did, a lot of people said, okay, thanks for pointing out the state standards, but that is a whole lot to sift through. So if any parent wants to look at the particular grade level expectations, can you see all the folders right now? Did that come up?
Yes.
Okay. You can see each folder has a couple different translations, but there's one in English, of course, for every single grade level. And it says what is new for that grade level and what students should know by the end of that grade level. So this is an example. Does it say welcome to first grade? Did it switch to that? Oh, good. It's working. All right. So this is an example of our first grade family guide. Instead of having to read and sift through the entire frameworks, this is really the essence of what's new in first grade. There's some guide questions that as a parent you can use to ask your kids about what they've learned. In addition to the overall big picture guide, There's English language arts and literacy, specific things that students will learn and work on for the year. There's also for mathematics, big picture, science, technology, and engineering, and history and social studies. So I would encourage anybody who wants to look at these, and I know many of you already saw these at Expectations Night, and some principals and teachers have shared these already at this point, but we're going to leave these up here as a resource so that really we don't want anybody having to dig to find out what does Massachusetts expect us to teach. These are the family guides that really give a very concise view of what happens from beginning to end each year. And let's see, and I wanted to address, someone had asked a question about a needs assessment coming out. I want to be very clear that when we send out our first survey to gather some feedback, it is absolutely not going to be a comprehensive curriculum needs assessment diving into specific standards on any content. We are literally looking at big picture. What does our community need to know? We're going to ask questions about what do your kids say about their learning experiences in Scituate? What is your parent experience? And we're going to do, the first one I want to say in draft form is only about 10 questions, because we also want as many people to do it as possible. So we don't, we want to make sure everybody gets from beginning to end. So as our committees continue to work during the year, and if we have more questions to ask, we'll do that throughout. And we will post it on the website so parents have access. We'll share it through our Thursday Thoughts, and we'll make sure it gets widespread for the window that we're collecting information for. And that's all I have.
Great. Are there any questions for Ms. Driscoll?
I just have a quick question. Thank you for that presentation. I did look a little bit at the guides for the different grades. What would you suggest for parents who might want a little bit more information of, say, you know, the topics being discussed in their son or daughter's particular class? Would you suggest they just reach out straight to the teacher for, I mean, I know I get a lot of information like in the high school level of everything that's being taught. So where would you point them? What direction would you point them in?
Well, I'm not sure what you mean exactly by what's being taught. I think that whenever a parent wants to know what's happening in a classroom, the teacher is who you have a conversation with. And I would definitely, if a teacher has a Google Classroom available, which most do, go in, take a look, see what's happening for the week, have conversations about what comes home with your child. And if you have a question about a certain activity or a particular lesson, definitely reach out directly to the teacher. And I personally recommend, you know, as much as possible, real-time communication. I know email feels like it's two-way communication, but sometimes there's just a lag with replying back and forth. So I think anytime you can do that, that's better. But the teacher is definitely the first person to go to. So if you asked me what is happening in Joe Schmo's classroom yesterday, I don't know right now. I haven't seen that lesson plan. I don't, you know, but the teacher always knows, and the teacher wants parents to be involved with everything they're teaching in their classroom.
Oh, great. That answers the question. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anything else? Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, and I do want to say at least thank you for getting those out there on the website. I know hearing from a couple of families, it's been great that they've been able to go in and see those. Into Janice's question, I've at least been able to see at the elementary and the middle school level, and I don't have a high school yet, so I can't speak to there. I've gotten more emails over the past 2 weeks from teachers, you know, than I ever expected to see coming out of the first week of school. So, you know, that communication out has definitely been helpful, and I'm glad, you know, the teachers my kids have are starting to reach out, and making sure that we have that, you know, back and forth is definitely important for parents.
Can I add one thing? I want
Great.
to thank all the teachers who actually made an explicit and intentional effort to make sure that we connected with families. That's a part of our home away from home this year, making those personal connections so that we feel comfortable communicating and supporting each other. And teachers really did. They knocked it out of the park, really. So thank you.
Yep, no, I completely agree with you there. Great, and thank you for that presentation tonight. So next in the agenda on new business is the overnight field trip for Camp Borndale. Principal Beatty.
Good evening. Thank you for having us tonight. I'm here with Jim O'Sullivan. Jim is the Team A 6th grade Camp Borndale coordinator. We are excited to bring a proposal to the school committee for the first time in about 2 years for Camp Borndale to propose a trip for this year. So I have a slide or two that I'd love to share my screen, and then Jim is going to kind of share just a little bit about the history of Camp Borndale, our relationship with it as Scituate Public Schools, as well as kind of our purpose for proposing this trip. So let me share my screen. And let me just... All right, so I'm going to turn it over to Jim. And Jim, if you can just unmute yourself, and then we can get started.
Well, good evening. Thank you for the opportunity for allowing us to do this. Superintendent Burkhead, I would have sat next to you at the meeting, but you were kind of off in the corner. I was up front, so I'm sorry I didn't see you. Next time, though. We have been going to Camp Borndale since 1989. We are one of the longest running schools to attend the outdoor program. We missed a couple of years. Last time we went prior to the pandemic was our 30th year. We won't be going till 2022, so it'll be 31 this year. I think I did the math right. I teach English, I can spell math, but I do my best. I was listening tonight about collaboration and families and personalization and developing the whole child. And years and years and years, I was under the tutelage of Mr. Dave Ball with this program. Many of you may know him from his historical society and teacher for 30, 40 years in the district. He always said that Borndale was 50% academic and 50% social. It's a lot of times, it's the first time a student has ever stayed overnight anywhere. My son is in 6th grade. He's never slept over anybody else's house except his grandmother's. So it's a great opportunity for a child to break out of his or her their comfort zone and just experience all kinds of new, different, out of the box experiences that are 100% academically inclined. On the next slide, it will tell you that all of their classes are connected to the Massachusetts state standards, but it really develops an opportunity for kids to see their teachers, their parents, their family members, their brothers and sisters in a different setting. We stay all week long with the children, so they see us in our jeans and our sweatpants and morning hair, and we're with them from 8 in the morning until about 10 o'clock at night. It's a long day for the kids, and we do that from Monday to Friday. Over the years, we've had Mr. Duffy, the custodian at Gates. He came down and stayed in a kid's cabin because we were short on chaperones. He showed up in his work clothes, slept, chaperoned the children, got up and went to work the next day. We have had former students who went to Borndale as children come back and chaperone with their brothers and sisters, and I think once with their children, just recently. I've been going for 21 years, probably between myself and 4 or 5 other teachers. We've got over 100 years down there. It's just an opportunity for the whole community to get involved in something larger than being stuck in an academic building in a junior high. It's a different experience where they're hands-on, they're crabbing, they're geocaching, they're climbing over walls and doing trust falls and dissecting sharks and writing in journals. And so there's English components to it. And it's just a well-rounded, out-of-the-box experience for the kids. It's been part of the community for, like I said, 30 years. I spoke to Patrick Hanahan, the head counselor down there, and about safety precautions, because here we are in a Zoom meeting talking about spending, time in a cabin. They have about 30 cabins that they have available to us. And he said he's he and the owner are willing to work with the school district in any way to make people feel safe and make any accommodations they can, maybe less kids in a cabin, so they're more spread out. Obviously, if they masks in the indoors, in the indoor classrooms, on the buses, because they do go off site, whatever is needed for this to happen, they are 100% on board. And if we do go, he will come down and talk to the children. There'll be a night for him to talk to the families as well. I know some of you have had brothers and sisters and children come down with us in the past. It's been a very positive experience for a very long time. And if ever there was a year to have it, my goodness,
Right.
we're getting there, but I just think it would be cleansing.
Yes. So this year we are proposing, we have the same 2 weeks that we've always had. One team, we are proposing go the week after April vacation. The second team going the following week after that. The cost this year is approximately $550 per student. The reason why we need to come to school committee tonight to ask for approval or partial approval is because we do need to get our fundraising off the ground because many students rely on the fundraising to afford the trip. And so we need to spend a good number of months fundraising in order to reduce the cost because $550 is a lot of money. We also spent a lot of time coordinating chaperones, as Mr. O'Sullivan just shared. This requires a community effort in terms of the number of adults that are needed. In terms of chaperones, we need close to 60 adults for each week to come down, so that takes time. And then finally, I think Mr. O'Sullivan alluded to, we know and we recognize that we are living in a pandemic, and we know that things change. And so we are asking tonight, for approval for this trip. However, we're also understanding that if we need to go with many contingencies, whether that is coming back closer to the date of the trip to see where we are, that's ultimately what we're asking for tonight. But just in terms of to get the ball rolling with fundraising, that's the big reason why we're here. So I'll stop sharing my screen and we can answer any questions that you have about our proposal, and that will be that.
I'll just start off and say, I think it's great that you're bringing this back. We used to have a school committee member who took this trip living in Scituate, and she continually said that it was, it still impacted her life 20 years later. So I'm glad we're starting to bring this back, and especially, talking about the safety piece, because, there may be a vaccine at that point, there may not, but, for these kids, we need to make sure that they're safe and can do the trip. So at the very least, Principal Pete, I think it makes sense. One, I'm glad that we can try to do this again, but just having that constant understanding of how it's going from a Borndale perspective, and then from a community perspective, how many kids want to go, what are we going to do for the kids that say, well, you know what, I don't want to go for safety reasons, or whatever the case may be, so that we can just have that honest conversation. And I know Mr. O'Sullivan puts a lot of work into this every year, making sure that we can follow through on it if Borndale is going to be open and willing to take kids. Sorry, Janice, go ahead.
Thanks. No, it's like very refreshing to be presented with a field trip. So, but I have just a question about, I was thinking as listening to Mr. O'Sullivan talk, if you came to us and said, we want to go to Borndale, I'd say, okay, you don't have to explain how awesome it is, because we all know what a great experience it is. But then now we have to talk about, COVID. So has there been any discussion on testing the students prior to leaving for the week? Because I know it's like at that point, who knows what's going to happen with the vaccines, but not every kid could be vaccinated at that point.
So there has not been discussion. I know our medical advisory team is planning to discuss field trips, overnight field trips, out of state field trips. And so we will work closely. And that's why kind of leaving that bullet point about just, we will work with whatever parameters are provided to us from both DESE and, our own district and medical advisory committee to make sure that we're doing everything we can, to keep everybody safe, students safe, the adults safe. But we are still kind of in the planning stages of the plan and what that actually looks like. I think if we were to come to you tonight and say we want to go to Borndale next week, like there's months to kind of get things figured out. And we work very closely. We're very lucky to have Nurse Roach right in our building. So she will make sure that she crosses all of her T's and dots her I's. So we'll make sure of that.
Yeah, I mean, having stayed in one of those cabins, I know what it's like to have all the kids there. But yeah, I mean, I'm all for it. We need something. The kids need something to look forward to.
Mr. Long, I just have a couple of questions. Kind of on the same theme. I think that Mr. Beatty, the question I had two questions. One is, what I'm assuming that there'll be some percentage of students or families who won't want to send their kids. Do you have that contingency plan? Will those students just stay in the classroom and attend their regular schedule, or has that been discussed or finalized yet?
So I think, Mr. O'Sullivan, you can probably share kind of the alternative experience we have. And Mr. Gates, I do think there will probably be a larger percentage of students who choose maybe not to go this year. So just because we've done something in the past as an alternative doesn't mean it needs to be the same. And because these count as school days, the expectation is for students who do not attend the trip, they do attend school and we provide an alternative experience. So Jim, do you want to just share what we do typically with
It's varied from year to year and school to school. When we were in the elementary schools, it was, the kids were always expected to be in school. We have over the past probably 20 years developed somewhat of a curriculum that goes along with it. And I'd be happy, I don't have it with me here at my house. And it probably needs to be updated after the last few years, but we have alternate activities or locations that your children could visit within the local community. We do have lots of children who have over the last 30 years chosen not to go and not been allowed to go. And they have been they'll either sit in with the other team or they'll who knows, based on the numbers, not every teacher might not feel comfortable going. So we may be able to develop something around that, but we've never had a year where every kid has gone.
Right.
And so those kids have always been held to the same academic standards through a variety of activities, lessons. Maybe we could set up something on Zoom this year, even, who knows? But yeah, no, it's always been something that we've dealt with over the last 30 years and based on the situation, but they are expected to be in school and they will have activities that they need to accomplish as a sort of equivalent to what they would have been doing down at camp.
Okay. Yeah, no, I mean, I would anticipate that whether you get, I don't know what the number is, 5 or 10% of the students that don't go, you'll be looking at, maybe 20 or 25%. So it'll be a bigger group. So just something that, obviously have plenty of time to work on that. And the other question, I think that this was the issue, when COVID first started, is all this fundraising was done. And then the trip didn't happen. So I don't necessarily want to talk about what happened with those funds. I know that's not really for now, but do we have a contingency for that too? If we approve it and we move forward and then for some reason it gets canceled, do we have a good way to potentially handle that?
Sure. So with Borndale offers full refunds to all students. And so that's, almost unheard of when we talk about like trips. We lost a lot of money with our Quebec trip and things like that, but Borndale refunds 100% of money that students pay. In terms of the fundraising piece gets a little sticky and tricky because with the money that's raised, the school gets a certain percentage, which then goes into a general fund. And we would use that fund as to provide an alternative experience for students at some point in their experience in Gates. So for example, last year, the class that unfortunately didn't make it to Borndale because of the pandemic, we used the funds that they raised as a class and brought the entire class to Peggotty Beach. We had a sandcastle competition, we fed them pizza, we got the Nona's ice cream truck, and that was covered by the funds that they would have raised for Borndale. But everybody got the $550 back. That was just the money that was raised from the catalog and wrapping paper and those things.
And those folks still got their wrapping paper.
They still did, yes.
All right. Sorry to bring up those points. I mean, these field trip requests are usually, I wouldn't say mundane, but kind of just like, okay, yeah, you're good to go. And now it's just what we've been through. We have, these other questions that we just have to be aware of. But thank you for bringing it. I think you're ahead of schedule. I think, right? I think the policy is what, 6 months, or in states even less than that. So thanks for bringing it so early.
Thank you.
I have a question. So this is a self-serving question somewhat, fully upfront with that. So actually 3 of us have 7th graders and none of them got Borndale and they didn't get Peggotty Beach either. So I'm just curious, what about that grade in terms of, is there any thought put into, because that grade missed out on 5th grade, recognitions and moving on ceremonies and such. And then it won't let me live down the handball tournament that was supposed to be 5th grade as well. So just curious. I know Borndale's obviously a 6th grade thing, but my brain was spinning about like, would it be cool if it was an 8th grade thing and then the class that didn't get to go could go, and then the 7th grade would go next year and the 6th grade would go in 8th, so nobody would miss out at all. But I guess I'm making up an entirely new program in my brain. So, so it's just always 6th grade, and it's always, is that because of the mass standards? And that's just, I know that's how it's always been done, but
Right.
just trying to be, alternative COVID-y.
Sure. And we want every student to have a memorable experience, lots of them at their time at Gates. And I think at the end of the year last year, it was our teachers and parents that said, we want to do something special for this grade. What can we do? And they put something together. It really was a great experience for our kids. So we know that grade, because there's always that grade in every school, whether it's the junior class missing the prom,
Exactly.
or our kids missing Borndale. And I think, working together, we'll put something together for them. It's not going to be a week at Borndale, but we will make sure that they have something special that no one else will have just for them at some point.
Thank you.
And maybe we can book a cabin this weekend, Nicole, for the day.
That's great. Let's just send them.
There's probably a wedding there this weekend.
Right.
Starting to book up.
And
Yeah.
I'll buy you some wrapping paper too, just so you can participate in
Excellent.
that too. Right.
And actually I had a similar question to Nicole, because I have an 8th grader who fundraising couldn't go. With Borndale, for the 2 weeks that we have planned, are we the only school that's going to be there?
Yes, we are the only school that is going to be there during those 2 weeks. And that's why, in working with Arnie, the camp director, all summer it was, back and forth. It was, do we want to reserve? Do we not want to reserve? And he knows that, this is contingent upon what's happening and upon your approval. So he was very gracious the last time and said, here's your refunds. I understand. And that they're in the business and they want kids to be safe and have good experiences. So he will work with us. Those 2 weeks belong to us.
Okay. So I guess my follow-up, and this, I was going to the same place as Nicole, if they had openings in other weeks because other districts weren't going, if it fit in the curriculum, we could have some of those kids who missed it go. Great. But, I know that it gets into a slippery slope there. The one other question I had, and I'm not trying to solution for this here now, but would we, if there are a number of kids who say, I want to go, but, I don't want to stay overnight, do we think we have the leeway to be able to either bus kids back and forth and not put that onus on parents? Because I know that's an hour drive from Scituate, just to make sure that whatever large groups of scenarios that we have, we can, accommodate as many students as possible.
Sure. And I think we've done that for students in the past as well. So I think that's definitely a possibility.
Okay, great. But I mean, like I said in the beginning, I'm glad this is coming to us again. I'm, glad we can get to that sense of normalcy again and have that sense of community with our 6th graders being able to go to Borndale.
Thank you.
So seeing no other questions from the committee, is there a motion on this agenda item?
I can make the motion. I make a motion to approve the overnight field trip request for the Lester J. Gates grade 6 students to attend Camp Borndale during the April 25th to 29th or the May 2nd to 6th, 2022 school weeks.
Second.
So I'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Gates,
Yes.
Brandolini,
Yes.
Ms. Lindblom,
Yes.
Dr. Warkowski,
Yes.
and Long, yes. So great. So like I said, thank you for bringing this. If you can just keep us updated, semi-regularly with any changes to the status, that would be great. But hopefully this can work out.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you both. The out-of-state overnight field trip to the Model UN was pulled earlier today, so we don't have to discuss that tonight. So the next item on the agenda is the Athletic Handbook.
Thank you. Athletic Director Payne, I think, is wrapping up with athletics for today. So I'm going to present. There are just a couple changes. On page 1, we updated the date and athletic director contact information. On page 2, we added the correct links for the MIAA and Patriot League handbooks. Going into page 7 from page 6, we just added that the approximate size of a squad will be announced at Meet the Coach Night and/or the first tryout. We removed the specific COVID addendum from last year. And then we added the banner advertising, which we spoke of a few weeks ago. For the 21-22 school year, only boosters organizations will have the opportunity to display or hang temporary banners at athletic contests for the purpose of fundraising. The banners will be hung in designated locations approximately 1 hour before the contest and removed at the conclusion of the contest. All boosters groups will have the ability to participate in this program. The sponsors and banners must be approved by administration before they are displayed. Home contests that take place at sites off campus will need the approval of the site ownership or management to display the banners. Each booster group participating will be responsible for producing the banners, storing and maintaining the banners. And finally, the funds generated from the advertising will go directly to the booster group. So changes are minimal to the document as a whole. That's all we have for this year.
And thank you for bringing this back after our last meeting. Are there any questions from the committee? The only question I had, and I noticed at the first football game, there were a lot of banners out there, so I was glad to see that the boosters were able to get, a lot of support out there. Can we just get, maybe after the fall season, can we just get an idea of how the boosters did across the board? And just, what other booster groups are looking to do any fundraising like this?
Absolutely.
Obviously, anything that can benefit our students is great. And, just seeing that and understanding who's supporting our sports teams, we want to make sure that we acknowledge and recognize as well.
We'll do a full accounting at the end of the season.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
If there's no questions, I'll take a motion on the Athletic Handbook.
I'll make a motion to approve the 2021-2022 Athletic Handbook as presented.
I'll second.
Long, yes. Mr. Gates?
Yes.
Ms. Brandolini?
Yes.
Dr. Barkowski?
Yes.
And Ms. Lindblom?
Yes.
Great. Thank you for bringing that back, Dr. McGraw.
Thank you so much.
So next up is the Memorandum of Understanding regarding the evaluations. So I'll turn it over to Superintendent Burkhead.
Thank you, Chairman Long. And I highlighted this a little bit as I opened up the meeting tonight with our goals, and a document we're very proud of, I think, as it exemplifies one of our pillars this year in collaboration in our administration, working closely with our members of our Scituate Teachers Association. And we have an evaluation committee, which is comprised of teachers and administrators working collaboratively to review and assess how our MOU went last year. That was revised and worked on again collaboratively in a document that received really positive reinforcement and response to it. So since it was an MOA and we're in the middle of, or we're beginning this year, I guess, negotiations for a new 3-year contract for all our unions. We collectively thought that looking over this MOU and pushing it forward another year was valuable. So the group convened again and looked at it, made some slight edits from last year to make it even a better document, more user-friendly. And just to highlight some things that we talked about earlier, that the current document in the contract has, and that other districts you've been in with a lot of red tape that just take DESI's document and put it in there. This one specifically pushes the timelines out a little bit, so it's more realistic, so that people can get the year underway and have time to discuss goals and make that a very thoughtful process, and allow us the time to talk about the superintendent's goals and the school committee's goals and have all those conversations and get it done. So I think, again, a wise move and collaboratively decided on. I think another interesting thing that you don't see in a lot of these evaluation documents at schools is that the focus on using the 2021-22 Department of Elementary and Secondary Education focus indicators. Those are documents produced by DESI based on research and best practices that I used for my goals, and that the teachers have agreed in this document to use as guides for their goals, which again allows for consistency and allows for, you know, everyone kind of aligning to what is out there for some best practice examples. So I thought that was really great about this. Also, if you ever looked at the educator rubric, it's quite unwieldy. There's several indicators, several sub-indicators, and you really can get lost in it and you can lose focus. So having focus as a district is really something I appreciated as an educator, as a principal, and now for our team to come up with this together to really focus on 6 areas of the rubric that align with our pillars is pretty unique and awesome. And for example, there's curriculum and planning as an obvious one, but that's a major focus under standard 1. Standard 2, teaching all students, the learning environment, which is the climate, the cultural proficiency, which we've been talking about for 2 years now, is a pillar that we're very passionate about here in Scituate. So that again will be something we value and measure. Collaboration is mentioned a couple times, and reflection. So, and lastly, there's updated rubrics in here to look at for our staff and clearly defined timelines. Oftentimes in the DESI document and the one we currently previously had, it's really convoluted and complex. This is simplified. It's clear. The expectations are clear for everybody. The dates, times are clear, when things are due, what's due, who's doing it. And I share this in executive session at length with our committee. And again, I can't say enough about it. It's a really good example of our team modeling last year and this year, working collaboratively together, administrators and teachers, coming up with a document that we all agree is really good and the best way to focus our growth and learning, and the best way to assess how we're all doing. So that's a summary of this document. The Scituate Teachers Association overwhelmingly approved it, and I'm asking you to consider voting in the affirmative for this tonight so we can begin moving on in the process.
And like you said, I know we reviewed this in the document in detail before or after our last meeting, the executive session, but I'll open up to the committee if they had any questions before we made a vote on this. If not, I will accept a motion on the memorandum of understanding.
I'll make a motion that we approve the Scituate Teachers Association Memorandum of Understanding on evaluations as written.
Second.
We finally beat you to it, Peter.
Gotcha.
I'll do a roll call vote. Long, yes. Mr. Gates,
Yes.
Brandolini,
Yes.
Ms. Lindblom,
Yes.
and Dr. Burkowski.
I'm abstaining because I wasn't on the committee yet for that executive meeting.
Thank you. Okay, there you go. That passed 4-0.
Thank you.
So the next item on the agenda is the subcommittee and liaison positions that the school committee have. I'm gonna share my screen. So what I have up is the document that I shared with the members of the committee last week. So obviously there are a couple of positions that we do need to fill because Mr. Hayes is no longer on the committee. You can see those are highlighted in yellow. So Dr. Bukowski, you don't get a lot of leeway in which ones are open at this point, but I did open it up to the rest of the committee just to see if there's anything that they wanted to change from, or any of the open positions out there now that they wanted to take that Mr. Hayes had originally had. I thought it worked well with when we did this after the last reorganization. If people want to just email me the positions that they want, I can take that information, compile it, and then at our next meeting, we can vote those changes. I didn't want to just put this on everyone to, have a free-for-all on during this meeting. So, on our meeting on the 4th, we will go through and, update and revise the liaison and subcommittee positions that we have, and who the, specific board affiliation is, and then move forward from there. Any questions on that at all? If I missed you and you need that document, just let me know and I'll make sure that I get it over to you.
So Mike, you just want us to email you any changes that we,
Yeah, if there's any either position that Mike had that you want to take on, or if there's any that you wanted to give up. I mean,
okay.
I don't want to start changing everything around unless there's certain
Right.
things people want to.
I just have
come off
one
of.
that I almost kind of feel obligated to put up back out there, just because the time that the meetings are, I can't make it because I'm at work still. So I'll just email you. That's the reason. It's not no particular reason except for just scheduling, but I'll include that as putting it out there to anyone who wants to take that one on.
Okay, perfect. And as I get that information, I'll share it with everybody, and then report back out just the compiled information in our meeting on the 4th.
Okay.
Mike, it's Jamil.
Hey, Jamil, I'm sorry.
Hey, what's up? So I just wanted to say that you can take the DEI one off of there, because we
Oh
have
yeah.
myself and Nicole and Mike Hayes that spoke a while ago, and since then I'm the liaison for that, so you can take that off.
Okay, I'll take care of that. Thank you, Jamil, for pointing that out.
Okay, all right.
So if there are no other questions from the committee, this is the first and only opportunity for public comment. If people want to raise their hand, I'll unmute you and allow you to make that comment, and just state your name and address for the record when I call on you. Ms. O'Neill.
Hi, Mr. Long, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, great. Well, first of all, I want to congratulate Dr. Perkowski on being appointed to the school committee. Following her interview was very difficult for all the 7 other candidates. She definitely has the education background to serve our school committee very well. So again, congratulations to her. And then I have 2 comments that are actually separate. So first comment is, a few months ago, you had said you were looking into possibly having these meetings in public again. I know that you have the ability to have them via Zoom per the governor, but wondering, since the joint select board and school committee was in public, if there's been any thought given to resuming these meetings in public. That's sort of my number 1 comment / question. And my next question or comment is, while I was preparing for the interviews for school committee and whatnot, I noticed that our teachers not under contract right now. I didn't see anything on the website for a new contract. It looks like their contract ended in August. So just wondering where that stands. I'm not sure if that's something that can be discussed publicly. But like I said, while reviewing for the interview process, I did notice that. So those are sort of my 2 questions / comments. If you can answer them, great. If not, I'm sure you could email me.
So in terms of coming back into public meetings, so actually during the joint meetings with the Board of Selectmen, I talked to Seth Pfeiffer. There is some technology that he's looking to purchase that is on back order. The overwhelming response that I've heard from the community, especially where we're having a huge focus on curriculum, is having these meetings continue to be remote so that people can attend. You can see through people's videos throughout the meeting that they're sitting at home. They're able to, when I looked earlier, there were 15 people on the Facebook Live. So being able to have people call in and, watch as we go is something that, has gotten great feedback from the town. We want to make sure we do that. But one of the concerns with being in person and getting that technology will help is one, having people be able to continue to interact through Zoom. But second, having there be good sound, because I've listened to a couple of the Board of Selectmen meetings and I know the sound can be a little tough. So that's just some of the things that we're trying to work through so that, ultimately we do want to be back in person, Jen. I mean, I would much rather be in person than sitting in a room at my house doing this meeting, but, we are working towards getting to that point.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you so much. I do appreciate that. And the senior center would be a fabulous place to have those meetings. That's a wonderful building. So that's one place to do it as well. And like I said, I'm not sure if you can comment on my other question/comment about the teacher's contract.
The only thing I'll say is that negotiations are ongoing.
Okay.
Obviously our teachers are in school, so that, there's no problem there. But,
Right.
Anytime there's negotiations ongoing, we don't speak to them publicly. So
Nope, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure that there may be something I had missed on the website, but that answers my question. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
no problem. Okay. Seeing no other hands raised, I'll move on to the next item in the agenda. We have 2 acceptance of gifts. The first is from the Michelle E. Default Foundation. So I'll turn it over to Principal Beatty.
Good evening again. So Michelle Dufault was a remarkable young person studying astronomy and physics at Yale University when she passed away in 2011. Michelle was a model for all, and her legacy continues to inspire us all, especially young women, to get involved in STEM-related activities. We are extremely grateful for the generous gift of $1,000, which would be put to use to enhance our students' studies at the Gates Vernal Pool. So we are very grateful for this gift that has been sent our way, and we are looking for approval to accept the gift.
Do we have a motion from the committee?
I can make that motion. Make a motion to accept with great appreciation from the Michelle E. Dufault Foundation, the Vernal Pool Science Grant.
I second it.
Okay, thank you. So I'll do a roll call vote. Long, yes. Mr. Gates?
Yes.
Ms. Brandolini?
Yes.
Ms. Lindblom?
Yes.
And Dr. Bukowski?
Yes.
Thank you. Please express our gratitude to the family, Mr. Beatty.
Thank you.
And then the second is a donation from the Service Master South Shore. And then presenting that is Dr. Dutch.
So we received a donation earmarked for school supplies from Marlon Blanco, the president of Service Master South Shore, in recognition of our collaborative partnership. Service Master South Shore stepped in last fall to ensure our schools were sanitized and disinfected. And he has so appreciated that relationship that we have that he made a donation of $1,250 for school supplies. We look forward to our continued relationship and would like to thank Mr. Blanco for his donation.
Thank you, Dr. Dutch. Is there a motion from the committee?
I can make that.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you go. Go for it.
The school committee will entertain a motion to accept with great appreciation from Service Master South Shore the monetary gift to be used for school supplies across the district.
I'll second.
Okay, great, thank you. So do another roll call vote. So at Long, yes. Dr. Bukowski?
Yes.
Ms. Lindblom?
Yes.
Ms. Brandolini?
Yes.
And Mr. Gates?
Yes.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Dutch. So next on the agenda, so we have two sets of minutes to approve. The first is from our school committee meeting on August 30th. I'll entertain the motion on that.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes of August 30th, 2021.
Second,
Thank you. So, Long, yes. Lindblom,
Yes.
Ms. Brandalini,
yes.
Mr. Gates,
Yes.
and Dr. Borkowski.
Abstain.
And then we also have minutes in our backup from the September 15th joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen. I'll entertain a motion on that.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes for September 15th, 2021 as presented. And amended too? Is that correct?
No, we only got one set of minutes. It would be the most latest minutes. I think there's only one that came in, but yeah.
Okay, it wasn't the one that had Peter listed as chair.
So that was actually the 8:30 school committee minutes.
Oh, okay. All right.
And that motion was fine because we didn't amend them in any way. It's just the updated list, the updated minutes that we got.
Okay.
I'll second.
Long, yes. Mr. Gates,
Yes.
Ms. Brandalini,
Yes.
Ms. Lindblom,
Yes.
and Dr. Borkowski.
Abstain.
Lorraine Devon did ask that we sign the minutes and then have them sent back to the Board of Selectmen. Kim should have them in the office, so people have time to either go in this week or next week and have them and sign them, or someone needs to have them delivered to them because of get them out of normal office hours. We can make sure that happens just so we can get them back to the Board of Selectmen. But the bigger thing was approving it tonight. So thank you.
Mike, who needs to sign them?
Because we
The-
signed- yeah,
Everyone except Dr. Borkowski. So the four of us.
because we signed, she passed around the
Oh, yeah, we signed them.
we signed.
Those were the 8th and the 9th, not the 15th.
Got it.
Okay.
Got it.
So there was no correspondence. Were there any warrants?
There are three warrants. The first is warrant S210902, the total amount of $106,283.52, of which $103,863.95 is from LEA funds. There are no significant purchases, with the exception of private school tuition of $11,065 and contracted services for heat in the amount of $25,758.30. Are there any questions on that warrant? Moving on to warrant S210909 in the total amount of $117,408.89, of which $22,791 was spent out of the IDEA special ed grant for summer transportation, and $16,547.30 was spent out of technology for interactive whiteboards. Out of our LEA budget, we spent another $6,532 for summer transportation, $33,880.53 for private school tuition, specifically the Perkins School and Higashi School. In curriculum, we spent $13,893.75 for Renaissance Learning, which is a instructional package. And those are all of the significant portions on that warrant. Any questions related to that one? And finally, the last warrant, S210916, $347,532.79 out of school lunch, $8,953.30 for Mosaic software That's the lunchbox and then the sign up tracking information for students. An insurance loss for a bus accident in the amount of $7,000. And this is cumulative from a bus that we turned in off of a lease. Spent $5,411 out of the Title IV grant for pair. Another $21,060.66 in technology for additional whiteboards, not whiteboards, interactive display units, as well as some computers. $22,500 out of the ESSER II grant for Mass Insight, which is a membership that provides us professional development at no cost. And then out of our LEA budget, $274,150.83. Our electric utilities was $45,466.51. Social study supplies, $9,688.48. We paid our bus lease for 14 buses for this year, $164,186.77. And those are the only large purchases. And all of these warrants were signed by committee member Gates. Thank you for coming in and taking care of those, Mr. Gates. Any questions on that last warrant? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Dutch, for presenting this.
Sure.
Is there any other business that the school committee members want to bring up? Yep, seeing none. So coming up in future agenda items, we'll have our school committee goals. Superintendent Burkhead's goals will come back. I'm sure we'll continue to hear on the great things being done from a curriculum perspective. Is there anything else from the committee? If not, I will entertain a motion to adjourn at 8:07.
So moved.
Second.
Do a roll call vote. Long, yes. Brandolini?
Yes.
Bates?
Yes.
Lindblom?
Yes.
And Borkowski.
Yes.
Great. Thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of your night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.